All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Noobie Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hulritz, and I'm excited to have you here. This is literally the second episode in this brand new podcast that is dedicated to new photographers. If you're in your first 3 years of business, or maybe you haven't even officially started yet, you're getting ready to launch that photography business, this is the podcast for you. We're here to simplify photography and photography business for new photographers. And this is going to be really fun. It's a fun format, short form, 15 to 20 minutes long, simple, practical, actionable information you can take and go apply to your business. Glad to have you here. And I'm going to be joined by many, many different guests. The first today of which is a longtime friend of mine, Bobbi Brinkman. Bobbi, thank you so much for being willing to do this brand new show with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for doing a new show like this, because it's full circle, right? We have to go back to where we started sometimes. So I'm glad to be here on this new adventure with you.
Well, and I have to say too, and I don't get to do this with every one of my guests, but I have known you for a little while, and I have to say it's truly a privilege. I mean, I don't ever say that just to say it, but like really, we've had the opportunity to spend time together in person, even here in Chattanooga where I live.
Yeah.
And I'm like super lucky to call you a friend. You're one of the most genuine people that I know in our industry, and certainly one of the most passionate in conversation. So I'm stoked for this conversation that we're going to be having today. And it's an important one. As you said earlier, we're going to talk about smart financial planning. This is in a series that we're doing called I Wish I Knew. So I'm having established photographers come on the show and talk about something that they wish they knew when they first got started. We're going to get to that in just 1 second, but I want to introduce everybody to you. I'm going to pull this up on the screen, but for those of you listening in, if you go to Bobbi, B-O-B-B-I, Brinkman, B-R-I-N-K-M-A-N, photography.com, you can see Bobbi's work there and her website. And then you can also go to Bobbi Brinkman Photography on Instagram. And you can see Bobbi's work and follow her there. And of course, we'll make sure to link to this in the show notes at noobiepodcast.com. But Bobbi, let's just jump right into conversation here. This is it's a really probably under-discussed topic.
Yes. What
is this topic? Will you just briefly introduce our listeners to this big idea that you wish you knew when you got started?
100%. And I'm a speaker as well as an educator in the industry. And I stand firm on stage and say, you can have the beautiful website. You can have all these followers, and you can have clients coming. And you look at your bank account and you're like, oh my gosh, man, I'm killing it. I am doing so much better than any 9 to 5 I thought I was going to have. 5 years, 10 years later, 20 years later. I am 60 years old, folks. And let me tell you, I'm much closer to that 62. I wish 100%. I would have known back then to surround myself before. Remember, I started with the 1-800 Yellow Pages ad and a big old window display, right? So I didn't have, we didn't have a website. No. So I started and I didn't even think about, I'm going to need somebody to help me keep my money. Because, I think as creatives and photographers, if we have money to buy a lens or we have money to buy a camera, oh man, we're doing great. We didn't have to borrow anything. We didn't have to do loans. And now I'm very blessed in my 40 years in this industry that I have not went the loan route. Now, full disclosure, I did jump on PPP through 2020 when we were all going through that, but earned and deserved, right? But I knew that I wanted to build a business that wasn't going to fall into a bunch of debt. So no matter what I tried, I thought I was doing the right things. And never did it dawn on me from day one. And so listeners, if you are just beginning 1 to 5 years, make that change. Get set up so that your money will work for you your entire career. And if you ever decide to stop or change or do anything else along the way, the fruits of your labor will be in the bank account to help you because it's been growing. Because we all know we live in a world right now of uncertainty, right? And so we know we need to have things there. And at 60 years old, I can tell you if I wanted to stop doing a lot of things, I have to look at what my Social Security is. I have to look at what's in my bank account. And friends, I won't be making as much money as I did doing one wedding. Yeah. So you gotta put that in perspective. And I'm honest and authentic enough to tell you, you're making $6,000 for a wedding. Will you have $6,000 coming in a month when you're 62 or 65 or whatever, and we have to wait for healthcare? Take care of these things now. Surround yourself with somebody that can grow with you. And I highly encourage somebody that knows about a creative business so they make your money last longer and go further, and you don't have to do a bunch of debt. Now, we know that business debt is okay. There's some business debt that's all right. But don't get yourself in a position where you have so much debt, and then at the end of your career when you want to slow down, You will be working somewhere else. You will be doing something else. So take this as a priority, write blogs about it, get into that abundance mindset mode, and get in that mindset of knowing you have to be financially sound from the minute you open your business, and let it carry you through. And find somebody that you trust that can help you.
Yeah. And, to that point, Bobbi, let's start there. So finding that person, that I will say, and you and I were chatting for a few minutes before we went live, but one of probably my biggest shortcoming actually as an entrepreneur for so many years was not proactively managing finances. And one of the biggest reasons for that, and it sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but I was just kind of scared of actually facing it. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so I didn't have context to how to manage money. I certainly didn't go to school for business. I didn't know what it meant to look at the numbers and how to manage those numbers proactively and how to think big picture like you're talking about. So I just, rather than actually going and trying to learn and deal with it, I avoided it, which is the worst possible thing you can possibly do. But to bring it back to your point, finding somebody that you can trust to come alongside you to help you is super important. And so when we're talking about those people, at least the first two people that come to mind, and I'd love your take on this. One is an accountant, certainly, somebody that can help you look at your books. We could find a bookkeeper even, just to be super simple, but an accountant can kind of do everything. And then a financial planner, somebody who can also help you plan for the bigger picture. Would you say those are the two most important people to connect with?
I think you have to find somebody, especially in this world that we live in now. We live in this, everybody can do everything. And we look at our bank accounts and we're like, okay, we're fine. But what's really happening? And if you think back to, Nathan, like you and I with our parents, my parents, like you, talked about money, but it wasn't a conversation at the dinner. The checks were made, the bills are paid. I never really wanted for anything, but I had to work. I've been working since I've been 16. Yeah. Did not go to college because the money wasn't there. So I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to make all the money in the world, and I'm going to do this. 40 years later, I'm very proud of what I've accomplished. But now I have to wonder, why didn't I trust somebody? And was it because I didn't know what to ask? And if somebody would have said to me, hey, you're making $3,000 or $4,000, but it's going to put $1,500, hold it for taxes, I probably would have been that young entrepreneur would have went, wait, you're taking $1,500? How do I buy a lens, or what do I do? And if you start with this and you get somebody and you get a financial tax person, they can say to you, hey, at the end of this year, you need to go buy a camera, or you need to go do this, or this is how you need to do. And then your financial planner can grow with you as your business grows. And when you're younger and newer in this industry, let's just, for the sake of conversation, say before you start having kids or maybe get married, you can afford to sock away a little bit more and start that financial end goal starting now. Right. But finding somebody that you can trust, right now it's asking people. There are so many, I think, younger entrepreneurs out there that are into the accounting and into the numbers. And if we understand the numbers about what we're charging for pricing, are we doing that just because look, I got $10,000 extra in my bank account today. But do I? Is that really only $4,000 extra in my bank account? An accountant can help you understand what to charge, why to charge, so you really understand that profit. Because Nathan, you and I talk all the time. You don't chase the revenue, you chase the profit, if you're going to be chasing that. And again, you and I both believe there's more to business and life than money.
Sure.
But this is a situation we're in, right? We have to take care of ourselves 100%. At any level right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you make a good point, which is the distinction between profit and revenue, because it's a big difference, right? I mean, you just start with the taxes, and if I'm just going to throw a number out there, and for everybody listening in or watching, of course, go to your accountant and get the professional advice. But I would just say off the bat, 30%, setting aside 30% at minimum for every bit of revenue that you're making is the intelligent thing to do. And sure, you may have a little bit of extra, but now you've got a cushion you have to worry about. You have to stress out when it's time to go pay those taxes. But yeah, when we're talking about revenue, it sounds, and this is part of where I fell short. Much like you're alluding to, Bobbi, I was excited to start seeing money that I was just so unfamiliar with, right? I didn't grow up with a lot of money. My parents didn't talk about their income. And so when I start getting checks that say $5,000 or even $2,000 or $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, I was not used to this. And naturally I got really excited, but I avoided proactively managing that money the way that I should have been, certainly with the help of professionals. And it put me in a really bad spot. And long story short, I ended up with quite a bit of tax debt.
Yeah.
6 figures in tax debt, which fortunately is paid off at this point. But that's what happens when you don't proactively manage that, your money. Not to mention what you're also alluding to, Bobbi, which is having that nest egg that you can rely on when it comes time to stop actually photographing. So, but
Well, and you don't want to do that with somebody that you don't know. Like we tell everybody, don't be the photographer. Don't be the photographer at a wedding, or don't be the photographer at an event. I mean, my first couple of years, same with you. I had major tax debt. Again, thank heaven I paid that off. But I was doing it myself. I was filling out the online form or doing whatever, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm taking. Well, then, next thing I know, I started getting these bills of you owe $3,000 and $4,000. And let's face it, Nathan, when you're sitting there collecting a $3,000 check or a $1,000 check, and your friends are working at the local retail store or the local DQ, you feel pretty good about yourself because you're like, oh, I'm doing it. But then I think about all my friends now that are teachers that are my age now that are like, okay, we're done. We don't have to live in the world we live in now. We don't have to go to school and not follow all the policies. And because they had something, so we want to be entrepreneurs and we don't want to have a boss, but we still have to remember we're the hardest boss to work for. But also that boss provided an income and probably set up a 401k to come out. We know now that we can do those things. And I'm honest with you, I never knew I could do that at the beginning. I was so late to the game of putting money into a retirement that when I would have had a separate account for taxes, I didn't know you could have put that separate account into a high yield savings account and it collected money until you wrote out the tax check. That's crazy to me that nobody thought about talking about it. My parents didn't say a thing to me. There was nobody in the industry talking about it. And here I am at 60 years old going, whoa, all the years that maybe I could have done 1 or 2 less weddings and had more money now to help me grow. So getting those people, not yourself, getting somebody that you trust and vent and getting that done right so the IRS doesn't come knocking at your door and now you're not working later for the next 5 or 6 years paying off tax debts from 4 or 5 or 6 because just because you didn't understand it doesn't excuse you from not understanding it. So I'm really passionate about this. Get this done first.
Yeah. You know what, Bobbi, and I was thinking as you're talking too, I mean, we really can kind of end the episode at this point because as much as I wrote down a few more talking points, really probably the most important advice that you're sharing now, outside of just sharing your story, which is incredible and so important for new photographers to hear. The biggest piece of advice is go to the professional now. So that means an accountant and a financial planner. Those are the 2 people that you need to be talking to. And you also make an interesting point, Bobbi, which is that there are a lot of people that call themselves by those titles out there. Best thing to do is to go to your friends who have experience working with a certain individual or individuals that can make a strong recommendation rather than just simply going and doing a Google search. That's also, make sure that you can find somebody you can trust and do that based on recommendations from trusted friends or family members. I think this is really important. Bobbi, you and I have done podcasts before that were like an hour long. This is like 10 minutes, 12 minutes so far, but this is actually exactly what we're trying to do.
Right.
And this is perfect advice for everybody. And I really appreciate you, first of all, your openness and being willing to share your story, but also this advice. And for those of you listening in or watching, again, as simplistic as it may seem, this very piece of advice will literally set you up for the long run. If you don't have an accountant right now who can give you professional recommendation advice to help you get everything set up so that you're managing your finances on an ongoing basis, and you don't have a financial planner who can help you plan for the long run, then you need to go do that right now. That is going to help you get set up for long-term success. Bobbi, I really do appreciate your recommendations, your advice and suggestions. Will you remind our listeners where they can find you online and follow you as well?
Sure, you can. You can follow my photography, which is Bobbi, Bobbi, brinkmanphotography.com. You can also follow me over on my consulting, which is educational, which is bobbibrinkman.com. And again, I wish you all the best. Get a little scared now. Get a little uncomfortable now, so that in your future, you can sit back and really embrace all the wonderful things that you've shared as a photographer. Embrace that, but get a little scared now. Invest in yourself now, my friends.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you.
Beautifully put, Bobbi. Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening in. Have an absolutely lovely